and welcome to the Overprepared DM podcast. My name's Jen. What's up?
And my name is Nick.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. This is episode 1. So excited. We've been talking about this, I feel like, for a year.
For forever.
Forever.
Yeah, we talked about it, and then we were like, cool, let's do it.
And then crickets.
And then...
It's like when you go and hang out with your friend, or when you want to go hang out with your friend, and you're like, yeah, we should absolutely hang out. And then,
then
like,
you don't see them for a decade. Yeah.
And then the same thing, you catch up with them, and you're like, we should hang out. Uh-huh. But I think in this podcast, we are going to be talking about like our experience with dungeon mastering and everything kind of Dungeons and Dragons related, and just vibing on what we like and things that, you know, interest us and engage us, and we'll have guests and things. It'll be fun. It'll be a good experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're talking about mistakes that we made too. You don't hear that a lot. So
right.
A lot of things that you shouldn't do if you want to run a game. This is where we are okay admitting that we screw things up sometimes.
Yeah. Like when you decide in the moment to let something happen and it screws you up later in your plans.
Yep.
Because you were doing the rule of cool and then it became a little too cool.
Yes. Yeah. A good example of that, just to kick it off, early on in my first Crit Chicks campaign, I let the players have this like magic off where they were able to cast spells and they're just kind of showing off their stuff.
Yeah.
One of the players cast Silence, which read the spell, it's a point. It doesn't move.
Yeah.
But they cast Silence on a sword or something, and it moved around in this stupid little game that they played. And now every time they want to cast Silence, they're like, but it moves. I'm like, no. That was one time in the moment.
I didn't mean it.
Chill out.
Oh my gosh. I remember I didn't read the rules for like a spell, and I had a distrustful person at my table, and I just trusted their word and what the spell did. And then the next time they wanted to do the spell, it had different wording. Like, oh, well, remember it did this, but actually it does this. And it was like totally different. And I was like, so now I'm going to look up the spell really quick. So that's my mistake. But also, table cohesion.
Yeah. What I do in that, whenever someone like wants to cast a spell that I don't have memorized because I'm not perfect. I think I am, but I'm not. But if someone wants to cast a spell that I don't have memorized or know enough about, I'll tell them to read me the spell. It's easy enough for me to look it up. If I tell them to read me word for word what the spell does, they'll learn it, and we'll make sure that everything is good. I mean, we're not going to keep fucking it up in the long run. So, right. That's a one little trick that I've learned is like make the players read the spell, because I had one player once playing a cleric who wanted to use turn undead,
right?
And it's nobody in my current group, and she thought that meant that turned people into undead.
Oh, that's fair. I think that's fair.
It's fair. It's fair. But my whole rule for the group was I will hold your hand for the first 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3. I will let you. I will make sure I'll double check your spells for you. That was all the first time I was playing D&D. But after you get to level 3, it's up to you to make sure you know your stuff. Well, it was after level 3, and she did it, and I was like, okay, nothing happens. And she's like, wait, what? And I was like, read the ability. Yeah. So that's something that I do to kind of. It sucks sometimes because they get this idea in their head, the players get the idea in their head, and they're just so excited about it, and you're like, it doesn't work that way.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think that also like brings around like an expectation that like you're also teaching them how to play, especially if you, well, more so even if you have seasoned players at your table, because you're teaching people how to play in the way that you want to play and the way that the table might want to play together. So that's definitely important. And I do a lot of just kind of trusting people's word, which is not necessarily the best thing, but at the same time, I play with players that are trusted and they don't want to cheat. They want to read the spells and understand what they do so that it's a good flow. All I say is, tell me what that does again, like really quick. Or sometimes I will say what you did and just be like, hey, read that to me, especially if I haven't heard the spell ever or often. I'm like, remind me what that says. Something simple so it doesn't like break the flow of the game. I think that's one of the big things that I struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things you really have to is it fun, right? You
Right.
don't want to like hurt someone's feelings, and you don't want to come off as like you're doing it wrong. You're having, your fun is wrong. But at the
Right.
same time, if you set the expectation, and you're consistent with it's all okay, right? My players, I've been playing with them for 3 years now, so we got a pretty good groove. We're good. But if I'm playing with someone new, or if I'm teaching someone how to play D&D, it's very much like what okay, what does fireball do? Tell me radius versus diameter. What you're expecting here? Come on now.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
That's
just
fair.
it's you got to find a good balance with that. So yeah.
So, do you play with people who have never played before or at your personal table,
And my personal, well, I
which
mean,
is
with
probably your
COVID,
stream table?
I mean, since COVID hit, no. So it's been a couple of years, but before I got into the whole streaming D&D thing, I was playing with new people quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I liked it. I mean, nothing quite like watching someone fall in love with D&D for the first time, and it's kind of like your fault that it's happening, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a while. I mean, I taught my like a bunch of my family how to play D&D. We play every now and again now, but people have never played a video game in their life are playing Dungeons and Dragons. So that's kind of playing with new people every time we play, because we play like every 6 weeks, 2 months or so. So it's like every time we got to restart a little bit, and
Yeah.
they got to relearn what they forgot. But yeah, it's been a long time. What about you?
Like my personal table, that's like shifted over time. My current table is a mix of people who are online only and of people who I know in person. And I've now, since DMing and things, I've now known them for almost 2 years now. But prior to that, it was all in person and people that I knew in Colorado when I lived there. And then prior to that, I had a table of people that I've DM'd for like years. So everyone got really used to each other in Texas when I was there. So lots of different tables, and the only people that I played with who didn't like know how to play were the people in Colorado. I specifically like wrote a game with anticipation of like teaching new players how to play. I just decided I wanted to do that. And I stupidly picked up 10 people, all of them being brand new players.
Oh no.
And
This is something you do not do.
I know, and I had been DMing since for years by then. Almost 10. And just well, I guess more over 10. So I've been DMing since 2007. How long have you been DMing?
Oh, not as nearly as long as that. 2015, 16.
That's fair. See,
Yeah.
I guess I like grew up with it around me. Like my dad was my first DM and everything like that, and then I was basically just the forever DM at that point. I actually hadn't played Dungeons and Dragons until like 2015, until I like played my first character. I always was just
Wow.
DMing stories for people. It was really fun. But yeah, like the new players, I oh boy, that was it was great. It was fun. They had really creative ideas, and that was also the same campaign where I did the rule of cool that messed me up later. Because I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, you're new and excited, and I don't want to squash your fire with all these rules. But at the end of the day, it's more of like, you kind of do have to learn eventually what these things mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that more about you know, we're called overprepared DM for a reason, right? The
Oh, yeah.
things you shouldn't do to make your life easier, because if you do what I did before my first game as a DM, you will do that for your whole DM career. You will never sleep, you'll never eat because you will have no time.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things that you can do to help with this in preparation is keep your table at a manageable level of people. Um,
I didn't learn.
I've DM'd for 8 before, and that was too much, I realized. Especially for new players, because everything takes so long in combat, specifically. Everything takes so long in combat that by the time someone goes, it could be an hour later before they do anything again.
Right.
And they could check out, walk away, go to the bathroom, get a drink, whatever, and then come back and not know what's happening on the battlefield.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's and it's easier to balance encounters with a smaller table. So Jen, don't do that again.
Oh, trust me, I've learned. Yes. So what having manageable tables, that's super important for preparing yourself. And you mentioned like what you did for your first game, that you would have no time. What was that? What did you do like for your first game that you don't do anymore?
Gosh. Okay, so I first off, I built the world first, not a town or a city. You know, I built a world, so I had this world that a year later I realized was way too small, and I had to make it bigger and change everything, and it's just a big mess. But we can talk about that at a different time. But the campaign started in a city.
Okay.
The start point was in a city. Not the quest, not the session. The start point was a city. So I drew out the whole city.
Oh, I see.
And I actually, I was drawing out battle maps and stuff on grid paper and all that. That's fine. That's cool. But what I started to do once that was done is I started to break it down into blocks on Photoshop, the city itself, and I started to like populate every building. So every residence, every shop, I was rolling on NPC generators and stuff, and like this was a big city and it would have been untenable. I think I got down a street and I was like, this is dumb. I'm learning my first lesson right now. They may never see this stuff or need it. This is dumb. I should just stop. A map is fine.
I'm nodding my head at you because listen here, my very first DM game. So it didn't start in a city, but like a few games later, they started in a city. I did not build the world first. I built it per session based on where they were going. And they were like, we're going to go to the city. And I was like, I have to have a whole city built by next week. And I need it prepped with people who have backstories, who have all sorts of things. So I stressed myself out for like the first week and several months, actually, before I started learning like tips and tricks. But my first session ever, I started it in a cave. And I looked at all of my characters, all of my players' backstories and character sheets and all of their equipment and everything that they could possibly do. They're level 1. It's not that much, but still. So I crafted like the first game and like with several encounters and like with the world feeling lived in, like you can interact with things and things will happen. So, I wrote every possible thing that they could do in every single section of the game. So I was like, they're in a cave. The cave looks like this. They have these items. And I wrote a blurb for if they used this item. if they used this item, if they used this item. And I did it for everything. I did it. And it was ridiculous. I did that for months before I was like, I'm burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
No.
Not even a little bit. And I just was like so determined. And when I started letting go of that, I started getting anxiety that like the games wouldn't be as good and as planned, but they were turned out just as good, if not better, because I didn't have everything planned out and they could go off course and I would be totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But imagine just the amount of time that you mentioned. Like, if I did what I did for my first game, I wouldn't have time for anything. Like, that's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to live, man. GMing, DMing, it's exhausting. After every session, I've DM'd for every week, almost every week, for at least every week for 3, almost going on 4 years now. And if I don't unplug the next day and just shut off, I can't function. Like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And just having that much prep to do along with it is just, don't do it. There's a saying in like writing, write deep, not broad.
Yeah.
So focus on something that's cool and prepare that with depth. And don't worry about the broad thing. It's harder with a new group because you don't know what they're going to do. But once you've played with a group of people for a while, you can kind of get their tendencies.
Oh, yeah.
You kind of know that, like my players, they get into a city and they're like, where's the weird oddity shop?
Of course.
So I have to every city, I have to make an oddity shop. And that's like the one thing I prepare with depth in every city because I want them to be able to go there and experience this weird thing. Of course, when I prepped for my session last week, they didn't go to.
Damn it.
So it was really cool. It was a really, really cool thing. They might listen, so I'm not going to spoil it. But if they ever go back, they'll have the chance to experience this thing.
Yeah.
Might move it to a different city too. But once you get there, you understand what their tendencies are. It's much easier to prepare for a D&D session.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's always, I think, brings in like an importance of session 0. But before we change topics to session 0, like my players, I would say their tendencies are never, to me, in my opinion, their tendencies are never as deep as I'm thinking. I'm like, they want to delve into this character and do this thing and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, nah, I just wanted that bread. Like, no, I just wanted immediate gratification. I'm like, oh, throws out 10 pieces of paper. Just kidding. Didn't write any lore about anything that mattered. Bye. But session 0, I think, is like a really important way to gauge whether someone is like not applicable, but like they'll fit at your table, because everyone has to get along, and it's really important for people to play together in kind of the same way. Like, we've all heard of like the power gamer trope, and like how there's always that one person at the table that does X and Y, and it's like, okay, well, maybe let's talk about that before the game starts. So what are some things that like you talk to your tables about during like session 0s, and or even if you don't have session 0s, what do you talk to them about like in group messages or whatever to expect for one-shots and games and things like that?
Yeah, session 0s, I'm a firm believer, and I'm glad we're talking about it in depth, because you hear so many people talk about like, do a session 0, and then that's it.
Yeah, what is a session 0? I think that's what I want to talk about.
They're crazy important. You get all your players together, and you don't have to create characters at that point. I actually prefer having them create characters separately, but at least have them sit down at a session 0, and you as the DM or GM, you set your expectations of the players. You have them set their expectations for you, and you really have to like figure out, like you said, is everyone going to fit? And one of the things I like to do is if they're not going to fit, find out why
Yeah.
and see if you can't like make it fit. So if you have a table full of role players, but one of that then there's that one outcast power gamer,
Sure.
right? Say, okay, so you're a power gamer. How would you make your powerful character fit in with their narrative storytelling? Let's figure out a way to make this work together. This is the theme of the campaign.
Yeah.
How are we going to make this work? Because I do think having a variety of types of people at the table,
Yeah.
it's a great thing. But yeah, I mean that's really it, is setting those expectations. Because one of the things I hear all the time is, as long as the players are having fun, that's fine. But the DM has to have fun too.
Yeah.
If you don't, there's no point. So we really want to set those expectations. Be open about your expectations. Be open about the theme of the campaign, and make sure that no one's going to be uncomfortable at the table, or the themes won't go too dark for certain people, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Because some players don't give a shit. They'll go right down into the darkness, the deepest, darkest depths of the abyss to tell a story. Someone will be like, "Hey, man, you burned down what? No. Let's not do that. Let's step back." So you got to set those expectations and make sure you're open about it, and just say, "Hey, these are things I like to do in my game. Are you uncomfortable with that? No? Great. If you are, it's okay. We can do other stuff." So
yeah,
that's really it. Session 0 is just an expectation setting session for me.
I think
do you
that's
do anything
fair.
differently for yours?
I would say that my session zeros, I really like. Of course, I've been telling my friends or whoever's going to be at the table like about the campaign and things like through text and through whatever, and they've been building their characters in whatever way they want. And I really think like session 0 for me is where I'm passionately discussing this world and answering like the weird, minute questions that people might have about the world, and helping their characters fit, because there's like the joke of like, this just looks like a D&D group because it's like crazy looking characters, they all are different races, and how did they get together and what the heck happened. And so that session 0 for me is helping them, if they haven't already, how did they do this? How did they get together? What is their backstory? They can have a story before this story. Like, what is that? And like kind of discussing things like that, and also making sure that like my expectations are met with like the game going forward. And I have an actual like list that I read to people, like, hey, these are the rules of the game. not the 150 whatever page book, but like my rules. Like, obviously number 1 is like, don't argue with me, because that's a big thing, arguing at the table. But I haven't had that in a very long time since I've set my boundary. But yeah, so session 0s are really just like I kind of talk about the world in a more in-depth way and like make people feel like they fit in that world, versus I'm an Aarakocra in a world of only elves. Okay, well, let's talk about how and why and where and when. So, and that helps them, I think, get into it the first game too, because they feel like they have a purpose in some way.
That's a very good point, because as a storyteller, you're gonna create a lore deep world in your mind. The players may not know that. They may not experience all the lore in your world or all the the nuances of it, but that one thing that they do might throw everything off.
Oh yeah.
Right. One of my things, a personal thing I don't really enjoy as a DM, are monstrous races. Monstrous characters, which is what I always tell my players is like, unless you bring me the best backstory I've ever read in my entire life, if you bring me a story about this character and why they are going to be in my world and how they're going to interact with this world, who's going to look at them differently, then we can go about it. Because a lot of times what I've found is with monstrous characters is like, they get to sit and like, look at me, I'm an orc.
Right.
And I'm just like, man, I don't want to tell that story. I don't. That's not a story I want to tell.
That's fair.
Let's make your character interact with the world a little bit better. And it's funny you say an Aarakocra in a world full of elves. I make my worlds a little low on the elven populations. You don't see elves a whole lot in my worlds because everyone sees elves. There's elves in every world. It's like they're 1,000-year-old, ancient beings who have vast knowledge about the world, and they're just gonna like make soup in a city for 700 years. Like, no, like let's give them a cool little backstory. Yeah, but that's just one of those expectations. It's an example of something that you can set in a session 0. Like, no, I don't want you to play a Kenku bard because you have to change your vocabulary every 10 sessions, and that just sounds exhausting.
Sure.
Can we do something different?
That's fair. I think on my end of the spectrum, I'm kind of like, okay, so if you want to be a Kenku bard, let's make sure that you're a Kenku bard in the way that you're going to enjoy it. So I'll talk with them about what's your expectation with this Kenku bard? What do you want to do? Like, when you think of yourself playing this bard that's a Kenku, what are you ultimately thinking you're doing? How did you become a bard? What? So I just I just question people about their opinions, but I don't make them like think that they're wrong, because ultimately you can play. I don't know. I made an orc barbarian wizard one time, and I named her Borva the Ghost Skinner. And she was horrible. She was a bad character. She had really shitty stats, and everything sucked. But, I wanted to try it. So at the end of the day, if people want to make shitty stat characters who aren't going to do well, that's fine. It's good roleplay pieces. As long as they're, willing to, make it fit in the world that exists.
And as long as they have fun.
And as long as they have fun.
That's the key. That's the key thing. Because a lot of characters are created, and they're like, oh, this is a great concept. I want to play this character. 3 sessions in, they're like, I don't like this character, and that's it. One thing I do with that too is I'm okay making vast changes to characters in the middle of the campaign.
Oh yeah,
I had she was a wizard. Yeah, she was a wizard first, and with the wizard, you got to find your spells, and the player was kind of a power gamer a little bit, not,
which is fine.
Which is fine, but they weren't getting strong enough fast enough. So she was like, I'm not enjoying it. Can we do something? And I was like, hey, do you want to switch classes at 3rd level? If you want to, we can do that. So, it's just one of those things. I mean, and there's nothing crazy about her character. She was a drow wizard, but just something about the wizard class just wasn't vibing, and just got to change it.
That's fair.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. You got to make sure that when you're creating a character, or you're creating a character with a player, be like, hey, in a year and a half, when you're at level 10, that's how my games go. Are you still going to be having fun?
Yes.
Let's make sure that is a very important question to ask.
Definitely. And I think that kind of ropes into what I try to do with my campaigns to alleviate people feeling like a stress. Because you can plan and over-prepare for your campaign and your players and your characters and everything that's made. At the end of the day, when you start playing, you could throw all that out the window and be something totally different. And because it's just the way that the feel is. So I always tell I always tell my players, hey, you have until level 3 to tell me that you want to change your character in some way. At level 3, you are locked in, and you gotta play that character until we're done. So, having done that, I had this group that I talked about earlier, the 10 people who have never played before. I would say 4 of them completely dropped their characters, and we wrote in a new one because they were like, I don't like it, I don't like what I'm doing, this isn't fun, I think this would be fun. And ultimately it made them more engaged because they're not forced to play this character, I guess. At the end of the day, if you don't like your character, you can just tell your DM and we'll kill you.
Yeah, happily.
Hey, I don't like my character, can you just do something cool in the story? Be like, yeah, cool, done.
Sure.
But definitely. So I had them like, I like wrote out some of the characters and we brought in new ones and everyone was more engaged and like happier with their new characters because they had those first 3 levels to like experience how they want to play, what they want to do, and like maybe their character isn't fitting with how they want to play. So they're going to make one that's going to fit with how they want to play. And I think it's important that DMs are flexible like that. I do. Some people I have met are not, and that's totally okay too. I just try to be.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, my big thing with it is like if they change their character, how is that really messing up your life? It's really not. It's fine.
Oh yeah.
I think one of the big things that something that new GMs or DMs can do is make sure that they themselves have a deep understanding of the rules for classes and races and stuff, and also make sure that the player has that same understanding. Because if the wizard in D&D is a great example, because you don't just get your spells.
Right.
You got to find them or buy them. And if a player doesn't know that, and, suddenly they're casting Fireball, and you go, hey, how did you get Fireball? And they're like, well, I just picked it. You're like, no, that's not how this works. You got to set that expectation up front and make sure that they understand that's how it's going to be before they even step into that character's shoes. Or, God, druids and bards. I'll never again let new players play a druid or a bard, because their rule sets are just so complex. There's so much that they can do in one turn. It's like, save that till you're a little bit more experienced. So that's a huge thing. Getting players to make sure that they're gonna have fun is they understand the rules, and that turn undead doesn't turn things undead. It turns undead things away from you.
Yep. That makes sense. So we keep talking about something that I realized we haven't explained, and that's power gaming.
Okay.
So, and I think that is different to everybody.
It is.
So, to me, power gaming is when a player or even a dungeon master creates something that is overpowered for the situation because they want to win. And that is fine. We play games because we want to win games. At the end of the day, to me, I think it's fun to lose. And I always tell people, like, when they fail something in the game, it's not a failure, it's an experience, it's a change, and we gotta move with it. And that's how we engage in that character development. And you, learn in different ways. And then there are people who are very focused on the way that our numbers look. Well, if I do this, then I can do this much damage. And that's the most amount of optimum damage that I can possibly do, and that is the most effective character for everything possible, and I want to be this person because I am a hero. And that's fine. And I think that's great. You're going to kick ass in battle. People can just watch, stand on the sidelines and eat popcorn and watch you kill everything in sight because you're a paladin. But what does power gaming mean to you?
All of the above. Everything that you just said there. I think the end goal is what you said: win. Right?
Yeah.
You got to understand that, the way I think about it is, you don't win in Dungeons and Dragons or in a role playing game. You win at board games. That's fine. But when you're playing a role playing game, you win every session by everyone having fun.
Yeah.
And telling a good story together. That's how you win D&D. And the power gamer can be an asset to a table.
Oh yeah.
Full of role players.
Definitely.
Totally can be. It's just they have to be okay losing every now and again.
Yeah.
And not there's the feeling against power gamers is that when they do lose, they throw fits. That's like the baseline. Boil it down. Everyone kind of feels like, I lost. Why did you just don't like my character? Why? It's like, that's not.
Sure.
Not all power gamers are like that. I have power gamed with a character before, but it wasn't to win. It was just I wanted him to be a fighter that was awesome because everyone kind of craps on fighters.
Yeah.
But I wanted a fighter to be like, hey, I can work this whole battlefield and watch me do it. But I also roleplay. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just that idea, like that I want to win everything, which is cool. But when you lose, just be okay retreating once,
Yeah.
or be okay with the loss of a beloved NPC or another
Yeah.
PC. You know, and it's not the DM's out to get you. Tell them the story together. You know,
Now, there are
it's
some DMs that are out to get you, and that's what I would call a power gaming DM who is
DM.
just
Yes,
like, I'm gonna
yes,
kill you. You guys are entering my world. Get fucking ready.
yeah, yeah. And unless that if you set that expectation up front, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
If you tell me, hey, you are gonna play 6 characters in this campaign before you get to level 10, I'd be like, okay, I'll give it a try. Let's see if I
Yeah,
like
let's
this.
see how this goes.
But
Yes.
if you sit there and say, I'm role play heavy and it's a thematic campaign and all this, and then I get in there and at level 1, you're throwing demons and devils at me and be like, yeah,
You're trying to kill me.
uh, I like this character. I want to keep
Yeah.
playing this character.
So, how would you prepare to talk with someone about, like, power gaming? And, like, let's say there is an issue and you get into an argument with someone over this move that you decided. At the end of the day, the DM is correct. I'll say it again, the DM is correct. And but something comes up and you obviously want the players to feel comfortable,
Mhm.
and someone is trying to win and is getting upset. So how do you talk with them about that?
It's a very good question. And, I wish I could like give a broad answer, but everyone is so different and it's going to be specific to each individual player how I have that conversation. But what I would do is sit down and look at them. And first, I would say, hey, I am not here to attack you.
Yeah.
Everything I'm saying here is about D&D. All right. This is nothing personal. This is about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Okay. And once I set that up first and foremost, if it turns into a fight from there, then there's something else we have to tackle, and it has nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, I've come to the realization that DMs and GMs might be able to be considered like amateur therapists because you're just looking at people through a different screen than everybody else. But
Sure.
just gotta say, like, hey man, I'm not trying to pick on you, but this is what happened, and this is how everyone's feeling about what happened now. And just kind of go from there. Make sure you talk it out. But I mean, it's going to be different every time you have that conversation because everyone is so different.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will be like, "Oh man, that's cool. I understand. We'll figure it out."
Yeah.
Other people might take it as offensive, and then at that point, it depends on your relationship with the person. If they're a friend, talk to them like a friend. Figure out what's going on. If they're a stranger and you're playing at a table at a game store and it's just like too much, back off. Say, all right, maybe you don't fit at this table.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's it.
At the end of the day, it is okay to walk away from a table too if you're not having fun.
Yeah.
There are so many people that want to play D&D. That's all I'm saying. The amount of people that I see saying, I want to play D&D, but I can't get a group together. They found you! You can
Yes.
play with
Yes.
them! But yeah, so we've talked about so much already. We've talked about mistakes with DMing. We've talked about taking players' ideas from the story, like in the moment, and just like making it like the thing. We've talked about playing with tables that match our play styles, teaching people D&D, our first DMing experience, session 0, making players fit in the world we make in power gaming. Whoo! So much. But let's talk about like, what do you do now as a dungeon master weekly to prepare for a regular game? And for people who don't know, we both stream on Twitch. So we have live streamed Dungeons and Dragons. Not an ad, but if you wanted to watch it. So we have different preparations than you would, like, in person. So I'll talk about both of them, but you start.
Okay. Yeah, so, oh man, the weekly game I stream, obviously. So one of the things that I worry about are plot holes. People watch, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want to have plot holes, but that's all on the back end, and it's just don't worry about that. If it happens, it happens, and you just deal with it and make it cool. One thing I do to prep every week, so I will write little blurbs or vignettes of like my intros are scripted. My recap and my intros are scripted.
Yeah.
And I will, if there's an NPC I know they might have a conversation with, I'll definitely prepare a few things for that person to say way ahead of time to make sure that I don't miss anything.
Yeah.
When they're talking to an important NPC. Because, guys, guess what? You're DMing, you will forget to look at your notes, and you'll forget what you planned. And at the end of the session, you'll be like, wait. I forgot.
Go back.
This person said this one thing. Is very, very vital to the mission. You won't find out the ending. Oh, man. So, I get in depth a little bit with my prep for NPCs giving out missions or things that give out missions. Is I'll outline, and then I'll fill it in. So just make sure you have that there, and when a thing comes up, read what your notes say. But that's really the big thing I do every week. I've kind of got to the point with my DMing that I can plan my sessions in my head. Yeah. And I know the outline of the session, and I don't need to write it down. But it's those the moments I need. I have to write those down where they're talking to an NPC or somebody who's giving them a job. Because in the moment, I'll forget.
Definitely.
And it sucks.
And I feel like my preparation style has shifted over time, especially since writing item by item what could possibly happen if they use it. And it was ridiculous. It was like, what if they use this chalk? What if they use this soap? Like, it was a lot. Like, I did so much. But I definitely dwindled to, like, trusting in them to do what they're gonna do, because they're not thinking about using the chalk, trust me, unless they are. But, ultimately, I prep as they go. I think a lot of individuals will prep the whole world, like you mentioned, and they'll spend years making in a world that is so full of people and life, and everyone has like wants and needs and everything, like things bogging them down, and everyone has quests and side quests and things, and you could talk to this person and know their last name and their 5 grandparents, and I used to do that. But ultimately, over time, I learned that they can still get the quest if they don't talk to the specific person that I generally had planned to give them the quest, I mean. So, I used to plan, like, they have to go to this specific place to get this specific quest, and if they don't go there, they're gonna miss it. And then I learned over time the better way of doing it is, well, now this person has the quest, and I just need to just integrate them into the story in some way. Be like, okay, you didn't end up going to the tavern where you were going to find this quest, but now the hooded figure is in your hotel room. So, whatever. That person is still there to give you the quest, and they're not going to miss it and derail the story and ruin your game.
Yeah.
But, so, regarding preparation, I, before, like, every game, I will plan out, like, a general map, unless I'm, like, a map maker, which I'm not. I used to try to be. I'll, like, plan out a general map or something, like a handout to give someone to make it more meaningful, being like, here, you get this specific item, whether it's, like, a note or whatever. So I'll plan something like that, and then I will do an outline of plot points. Wherever they go, those plot points happen. And it's been the biggest sigh of relief for me over over time, because I used to be like, no, they're going this way. Oh, they're gonna miss the plot point. And it's like, that's fine. They don't have to go from plot point to plot point. But now, especially in a streaming environment, I want them to hit those plot points. So I just put the plot point in front of them where they are. And it flows. It's not choppy or anything. It's just kind of like, they're just kind of always going in a relatively S/slightly straight line. Like, they're kind of going in and out and in and out and in and out of that line, but they're still traveling along the same line. So that's helpful. And I prepped the map. I used to do a bunch of Photoshop work, and now I just find things everywhere. If you don't know, Reddit /r/maps or like D&D maps or r/battle maps, things like that. You'll find so much stuff. So much
r/D100.
Yes. Oh, so
much
many
stuff.
things.
So good.
And then also, you can also just buy supplemental information, or even for free, you don't have to buy it, on dmsguild.com. That has so many people who have just like written games and things like that, and side quests, or even little maps. You can buy them there, and they'll have the whole explanation and all the pictures and things like that. So I usually just go through that, all the Reddits and things, and gather the maps that are closest to what I need, and then go from there. And then sometimes they're not used, and that's okay. I'll use them again later.
That's important. Sometimes they won't use it, or in my case, sometimes the players won't ever hit that plot point, and that's okay. Maybe I'll go in depth on how I structure my campaigns in a different episode, which will be fine.
Yeah.
But the way my campaigns go is the first few levels kind of railroady, in the way that's like I'm setting up the factions, I'm setting up what's happening in the world, what the big the plot points in the world are.
Yeah.
And once all that information is set up and they have an idea of what's going on, and once the players have an idea of what's going on, then it's like, it's up to you as a player to decide, do you want to interact with this?
Yeah.
Do you want to go look for these magical weapons? Do you want to go get involved with the very, very political, kingdom hierarchy craziness that I have in my brain that came to me in a fever dream once when I was 12?
Right.
So they have choices onto whether or not they want to interact with it. Or I even told them this in this campaign, this one I'm running right now, I told my players, like, hey, you guys know what's going on. You got a boat. It's a ship. Damn it, it's a ship. They've got me saying boat, and it makes me angry.
Because they keep saying boat.
I keep saying boat, and it's not a boat. It's a ship. Big difference.
Right.
It's really not. It's more something like it. Never mind. But I said to them, like, you have all this information. You have the means to travel. You have the means to be safe.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? It's up to you guys. You can go investigate these things. You can go find more plot points. Or you can sail off into a different direction, leave this thing behind. And when you come back, you'll come back to a different place, because things happen with or without you. So yeah. I think that would be a good topic for a
we'll definitely talk about that. I think that'd be really fun. I already wrote it down.
Cool.
I was like, yes. But, well, I think this would be good for our kind of first introductory episode. We just onslaughted a bunch of information at you guys, and this was fun. I am excited. We're going to be having some guests on, and we have some people planned for the next few next few kind of months-ish. We'll have some people on. It'll be really fun. But yeah, the general plan for the I keep wanting to say stream, the podcast is just, coming down with like a topic and just having a conversation with Nick about it, because we're both DMs and we're friends and we both stream, and it's a good time, and this was a good decision.
It was indeed. And if anybody who's listening has questions or wants to talk about something, follow us on social media, at Emo Azamar on Instagram and Twitter. Just tweet me, and maybe we'll throw it in a future episode, or Jen and her socials.
Yeah, that's at Jen is Online, everywhere you can possibly think of. Not OnlyFans. Also,
not OnlyFans.
Yeah, But yeah, no, well, let's chat about things. We're totally down to talk about things that maybe were sent to us, in between episodes, at the end of every episode. So that'd be fun.
And we're human. We're running out of ideas, so we need help.
Not
now. We got plenty of ideas right now.
Oh, yes.
And give it some time. We'll be like, so Dungeons and Dragons is a thing. Have a good day, guys.
Yes, the Dungeons and the Dragons. Thank you guys so much. We will talk to you next week. Bye.
See you.